happy Friday. Happy snowy, icy Friday. Thanks for tuning in to Radio Free Rhinecliff.org. In this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm. I'm your host, Norm, here with the wonderful Chris Gilbert, who, when I was writing the little promo thing on Facebook, I don't know if you saw it, I said intriguing.
Really? I missed that.
Yeah, you're intriguing. And we met playing tennis, and I was like, who's that guy? And you're sort of not like every other guy.
That's very interesting. First of all, most of us New Englanders have a nickname of some sort, like Norm. So I noticed that the tennis people that we play with, where I met you, everybody seems to like to give a nickname. So did you hear what my new nickname is?
Did it come from Mosto?
Yeah.
Gilbert.
It was Gilbert.
Yeah.
Gilbert. But now he calls me Lil Deep. He said it's my street name.
Little Deep.
Because I don't like to call balls out by saying out or be real strident about it. I like to say, it's a little out.
Oh, that's
so
sweet.
Then I shorten it to Lil Deep. And he says, that's your street name, Lil Deep.
I wonder what mine is. I can't even have a street. I'm a 60-year-old, middle-class white guy, just super square. I don't think I get a street name.
You got to have a street name.
All right. Well, thanks for coming. Oh, I see you're grabbing the ice.
Are we allowed to drink here?
Yeah, we're allowed to drink anytime. So great. Gilbert, in keeping with the tradition of this show, Little Deep has brought a bunch of ice, which he was trying unsuccessfully to crush and crack with a spoon, and he's making some kind of a cocktail. What are you making for us, Little Deep? I hope it's called the Little Deep.
At my favorite secondhand store in Hudson today, I saw these pink martini glasses.
They're lovely.
I said, how about a pink martini?
What's the name of the store?
Second Show.
Uh-huh.
So let's make a pink martini in honor of...
And just for the viewers at home, he dropped a couple ice cubes on the floor, but that's okay because he picked them up and put them back in the shaker. So there's no waste.
Well, there's going to be a little bit of a texture to this beverage.
Yeah, that's good.
Maybe it's got some sand from my shoes.
Yeah, sure.
A little something. But let's just see what we got here.
And so the vodka goes in, and now some Cointreau.
Yeah.
And now some cranberry juice.
100%
unsweetened cranberry.
You don't want too much sugar in this bitch.
Yeah, well, the Cointreau's going to sweeten it up a little bit, isn't it?
Actually, let's add more of that. So tell me what you try to evoke from your average guest here.
Well,
backstory, or you want the dirty bits, or the
all of it. I want to know sort of like who are you now, and what were you before, and how'd you get between the two, and where'd you come from?
I can talk about myself for an hour. I love it.
Yeah, well, if we ever,
my ex-wife would not be happy right now. But
which one would be least happy?
My second ex-wife that didn't believe in that anyone that did theater or singing or any kind of performing, she thought that means they didn't get enough love as a child, and they were trying to get attention.
Now, I find that incredibly interesting because Little Deep here, Chris Gilbert, is an actor, a stage actor, and I've seen you in at least one thing here in Rhinebeck at the Rhinebeck Performing Arts Center. I think they just changed their name or something. And I'm like, what? Really? That guy from tennis is on stage? But
singing and dancing sometimes.
And so you're
not dancing very well usually.
So your ex-wife, her theory that people who do theater are looking for attention.
Exactly.
What do you think about that?
I think that some of us do it for other reasons than that, like me. For instance.
Well, cheers. Here's to hearing all about it. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me on, so to speak.
Thanks for giving me a ride down here also.
Nice to meet you. Cheers. Okay.
Oh, that's delicious.
That'll do, right?
Totally hitting the spot, yeah.
Good. So I started out as a carpenter, and so I'm essentially a builder, and I work physically and build things, design houses, build them, and so acting and singing and doing that is a welcome, intellectual break from a job that you a lot of times are not that intellectually active.
Right.
So I started out as doing readings and I wrote some dialogue myself, and I would read it with friends, and it got worse and worse. Before you know it, I was doing, the lead in Oklahoma, and I'm trying to sing.
And, well, can you sing a few bars right now? Also, you had the lead in Music Man.
Oh, what a beautiful morning.
Yeah, nice. I'm not doing a clown of that.
It's been a few years.
Yeah. So back to your ex-wife's theory, and it didn't seem that was a very generous perspective on you.
It wasn't. I mean, she had her own... ideas about what made a good person and what path to follow, and she thought most of the paths that I followed just there was something wrong with them, So,
wow,
I couldn't blame her.
You couldn't.
He was right in a
blame.
lot of ways.
Which path that you were on, or do you now think was wrong?
A lot of the people you meet doing theater. Do you do theater?
I do.
A lot of the people you meet in fact, didn't get enough love as a child,
So you kind of agree with her
I
theory?
sort of agree, except I just happen to approach it from a different angle.
Right.
My family, especially my father's family, has always liked to sing. So my grandfather was a member of the Dorset, Vermont Methodist Church all his life, and he didn't even believe in God. He just went there to be in the choir, and he sang every Sunday. He loved it.
What was Grandpa's name?
Rufus Sykes Gilbert.
Rufus Sykes Little Deep Gilbert. Wow. And so you grew up in a family that enjoyed singing,
right,
which is kind of a joyful thing.
Oh, it's great. Do you sing?
Not around anybody. Yeah,
Come on, give us a couple of bars.
Yeah, I don't mind singing. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day.
You know who's doing that? Oh, no. Hugh Jackman did that role about 15 years ago on Broadway, and he did it like you just did it.
Wolverine.
Not operatically like a few bars that I just did, but he did it kind of like a frat boy.
It depends. For me, I don't know why I went up sort of the octave, because I'm mostly when I sing, I'm singing sort of in my speaking voice. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. But that feels more like speaking than singing, since I'm not a singer as you are.
Well,
maybe
I'm
that's
not
why I do that.
either, but it's just a totally amateur thing.
Yeah. All right.
So,
back to the ex-wife thing, because I'm fascinated by this.
Right.
Don't you sort of think that everybody, to some degree, wants attention?
Well, that's
and they're getting it in their own way.
Highly psychological. You know that I play tennis with a guy named Henry, who's a psychiatrist, and so you can always count on Henry to have the most psychologically twisted approach to playing tennis. Have you ever noticed that about professional psychology people? Like, if you call a ball out and he thinks it's in, it becomes this sort of psychological throwdown.
Oh, God, I hate that. But I know Henry, and I like him.
Henry's great. Yeah. I love Henry. We were supposed to play today, but we got snowed out. But anyway, we were talking about the fact that I was divorced. I was married for 10 years to my second wife and got divorced.
Yeah.
It was, like many divorces, it wasn't, you suck, get out of the house. Oh, yeah, fuck you. It was more like her indifference to me was sort of met by my apathy about our relationship, and we just sort of went apart. But so I thought, well,
not with a bang, but a whimper.
Exactly. We just sort of staggered apart. So she didn't think community or theater of any kind was a noble enterprise, and I did, but I didn't do any theater when we were married because, when you're married, you want your wife or husband to be happy, and you want to honor their feelings. So the day that we split up, I looked in the paper to see who was auditioning for what. I said, I might as well do some theater now, And the local theater company was auditioning for Music Man.
Here in Rhinebeck.
And I hadn't sang in 10 years or hadn't done anything. So I went to the audition thinking that maybe I would get a role in the barbershop quartet or something.
Yeah.
And they cast me as the lead in Music Man.
Amazing.
It was so fun. I became the Music Man, a character from my childhood,
Yeah.
The movie that everybody saw as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And the woman that they cast for Marion the Librarian was my girlfriend Amy. But at the time,
librarians,
we'd never met. She was married in an unhappy marriage, and I was Well, I won't tell you what I was engaged in case you have any young listeners, but I was trying to beat the record that was set maybe by Tommy Lee or something like that for
I see.
bad behavior. And so we became good friends. I would give her advice on her relationship, like, you should stay married. Whatever you do, don't get divorced.
Right.
And she'd said, I don't know, it's pretty hard. I said, it doesn't matter. Tough it out. So I talked her through that. She talked me through the things. We became good friends, and then we became single a couple of years later and ended up getting together, which
Wow.
I'm really glad about. She might even be listening. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for loaning Little Deep for the night. and so she's an actress.
She's more of a professional trained actress.
And have you ever appeared together since then?
Yeah, we were in. We went out to the Warner Theater in Torrington, Connecticut, and we did Follies, a Stephen Sondheim show. So I was Buddy, and it's kind of a big, scary role that I had to learn to sing. Stephen Sondheim songs are atonal a lot of times. They're really hard to sing, so you have to practice, and get this note, and the next note doesn't follow automatically. It's some strange other note.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that was great.
That's
Super
great.
fun.
And is there a role that you, or a play that you two talk about that you would love to do as a couple?
We might actually try to produce, which around here just means paying for the rights to the theater and renting the theater.
Yeah.
But we might try to produce Man of La Mancha,
Oh,
where
okay.
she would play the whore El Danza, which I can tell her she's typecast. But she
that's
doesn't,
nice.
She doesn't think that's a music.
Now I hope she's not listening.
She might not be listening. And I would try out for the Man of La Mancha himself, but probably not get it.
Well, if
because
you're producing it, couldn't you just sort of pick yourself?
it doesn't really work. That's considered. What's the right word I can say on the radio? It's considered
Déclassé.
déclassé.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We could say that word's fine.
If some big operatic singer comes in to try out, and I'm there with my normal pop voice, I mean,
Well, what are the chances if you're producing a local production of Man of La Mancha that that Pavarotti?
everybody, everybody. There are 100 potential people that always wanted to be the Man of La Mancha, reading every audition statement. When they see it, they will be there.
And what is it about
And they'll
that?
be 10 times better than me.
What is it about that role that is especially interesting to you?
That was Robert Goulet. Maybe in your childhood
yeah.
you heard on the radio, "To dream the impossible dream."
Yeah, I remember Robert Goulet.
So
and
that's-
I'm pretty sure you just did a pretty good Robert Goulet
It
impression.
was an imitation of him. Imitating.
Impersonation. And so that's something that you would like to do together. Are there roles that you individually think, oh man, if I could do that before I die?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them, but I'm starting to write some dialogue lately, and so I think it would be more interesting for me to actually write, starting with 10-minute plays. I've written a full-length play, but it's a little rough.
If you ever need anybody to do a read-through with you,
That'd be great.
I love doing that stuff.
Yeah, I'll actually send you this little 10-minute play that I have.
Oh, good.
It's called 10 Words You Can't Say in Red Hook,
Which is where you live.
which is where I live, Red Hook.
And how did you get there from wherever you were before?
Well,
How long have you been there?
I went to high school there, then moved away. I didn't like going to high school in Red Hook, and so when I...
Why?
Well, it was a completely different community then. It was farmers and people and IBMers.
Because you were in high school in like 1942 or something.
Exactly. That's it.
No, we're about the same.
more-
I think I'm
no
a
more
little
vodka for you.
older than you. I'm 61. How old are you?
Want a little re-up there?
Yeah, better. Better give me more so you become more obnoxious. That's what the listeners clamor for.
No, I went to high school in Red Hook. It was all right. It
What
was
year
fun.
did you graduate?
72.
Oh,
And so
okay.
I went off to this, quote, prestigious, just short of Ivy League kind of college
Called.
called Hobart College,
Where's that?
upstate New York. And so on my way, I said, I'm going to leave Red Hook. Not only am I going to leave, but I'm going to kick the dirt of this shitty little Red Hook town off my boots, and you will never see me again. Well, that was completely wrong, because now I live in Red Hook.
Now you live there. And We're trying to get the top off of the shaker here.
Yeah, we almost need a hammer.
This is what the producer is for. Thank you, Matt.
It doesn't. It gets jammed on there bad.
But what was the high school experience like that made it less than ideal for you?
Well, it was that least common denominator educational experience that public school really has to deal with a lot. Like they get a range of kids from. In those days, it was the kids of dairy farmers that who had maybe parents that weren't intellectually inspiring, to IBMers that were middle of the road kind of, and then there were a few high achievers, and they had to teach to the lowest common denominator. So, you ended up just sort of bored.
And how many kids were in your class?
We had classes of 30, just like they do now, probably. Okay. Oh, my graduating class was like 120.
That's not too bad.
It's not too bad, and they were nice people. But
still, it's not enough to have different levels of classes.
It's not enough to inspire you, to think, wow, I see what I'm going to become. I'm going to become a Red Hook person,
Were you acting in high school?
No. I didn't do that until recently.
What were you doing? Were you in sports or
some music, a little bit of sports? I played bass and string bass in a bluegrass band. I was in a wedding band.
So bluegrass
every
band.
Weekend we'd play it and had regular gigs that we play, and like singing.
She
came
dreamy.
In through the bathroom window.
Oh yeah, that's a Bill Monroe song, right?
Yeah, that's exactly. Well, bluegrass band was.
I'm kidding.
But the wedding band we had.
Do you still make music?
A little bit. I had a little injury with my hand. Showing the radio. Those at home in the radio
hold
audience.
It closer to the microphone so they can see.
My one finger on my left hand and mutilated another one, so I can't play chords on guitar anymore. But I can play a little piano.
Right.
Talking thing. You almost need a heavy.
A knife, a butter knife, really works great.
I don't know if that would.
Yeah, slide the back of that up against there. So how did you lose the end of that finger?
Well, I wouldn't do it that way. You might end up like me. I would close it back up and I would wrap it with the body of the knife.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
All right, good. Look at the three guys sitting around like, no, that's not how you light a barbecue.
I know. I wouldn't do that either because it'll twist it out.
Yeah. All right, let's leave him out of this.
With something.
Forget about that. Talk to me. Yeah, that doesn't make good radio.
I think you got that.
And
feel
so
that sound.
So you left.
Oh yeah. So college. So anyway, college
went to
was
Hobart,
sort of similar to,
which is further upstate.
It was sort of similar to my second marriage in that there, I didn't so much graduate as their apathy about my presence kind of matched my indifference about their education they were giving me. So I just kind of went away, and I decided that I wasn't a particularly good student, and that I would work. And I was not only going to work, but I was going to work at jobs that you could say in one word. Ooh, nice job.
Work at jobs that you could
say in one word, like carpenter or cowboy or roughneck or something like that.
Or student.
Well, I had ruled that out because I wasn't a particularly good student. So,
but you went to college after high school anyway.
I went to college after high school. I mean, I was a good student compared to the other students in my class. I was fine. Got into college.
Well, I hope they're listening now.
Did okay. And then decided that because I was a political science major and I was going to go to law school
at Hobart.
They don't have a grad school, but that's where I went at undergraduate, and I was going to go on to probably Northeastern in Boston. But I didn't have money enough to do
some sort of the vague plan.
My vague plan was to take a year or two off and work at jobs that you could say in one word and save some money and maybe do a little writing about what I was doing, possibly if I was inspired, and then go to graduate school. But it became apparent that I wasn't a very good student, and the more I thought about it, the more I thought this is really not my place. I don't have the skills that people that went to a prep school or just a better student than me. I don't want to blame it on the school. It was just I wasn't good at it particularly. So my first job was I got a job as a cowboy on the Snake River Ranch, and Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
A cowboy. So
Cowboy, yeah.
did you ride horses at this point?
Yeah. They took.
So you grew up riding horses. You had some
a little bit
skills,
but they thought it was amusing that the cowboy from New York was joining the crew. So they all gave me the worst jobs. But it was,
I'm pretty sure, like maybe 20 years ago now, that the professional bull riders was a black guy from the Bronx.
Is that right?
The world champion, yeah.
Wow. They had a local rodeo You want a little freshen up there?
Yeah, I really need that because I'm already ripped. Thanks for coming, Timmy.
So anyway, I just freshen you up a little.
Thank you.
So then...
So being
a cowboy was great.
You left Hobart.
Yeah,
after a year, did you at least finish?
If you're a lackluster, are you a good student, Norm?
No.
I was a lackluster student, and it's just not fun to be in a class where you're not paying attention. It's my own fault, but I needed to find something that I liked, and I was going to go through all the one-word careers.
I love that description.
So cowboy, then I became a roughneck, then I was a blaster on a seismograph crew, and then I was a
That was
carpenter.
Like 8 syllables right there. That's not a 1-syllable job description, but whatever.
But I went through a whole series of these kind of jobs, with glee. Like, I want to be a roughneck. I want to.
It sounds good,
and
looks good in a business card.
It was terrifying being a roughneck because they put you in the derrick 50 feet up, in the middle of the plains in Wyoming, and I'm scared of heights. So the first thing they did was say, "All right, wise ass, you want to be a roughneck, huh? College kid.
Yeah.
Here's what you have to do."
Because you'd done 1 year at that point.
Yeah, I'd done 1 year of I did 6 months as a cowboy, and then I was a detonator in the winter in the mountains outside of Park City.
No, but you'd done 1 year of college, so they're calling you college kid.
Right. No, I graduated.
Oh, okay.
Went 4 years. Political science degree. BA.
Right. All right, thanks for the second batch of yummy drinks here.
Here's to you again.
Yeah.
You want a little freshen? Once you...
So a roughneck, is that an oil... derrick kind of thing?
Two ways that manifests itself. You can be drilling for oil, which is what I was doing, or then when you drill a well, then they have rigs that come in and put tools down in the ground that have the same kind of derrick effect. So if you're a derrick hand, which I was, you ride the block and tackle up to 50 feet in the air to this spindly little thing. And they have, when you're drilling for oil, sometimes you get pockets of natural gas. So it's really explosive. Somebody's smoking a cigarette, and we were all smoking back then, everybody in
what
1970.
Brand? What was your brand?
I think I was smoking Winston's at that point, Camel filters or something.
Okay.
But whatever you could get, So if you hit a gas pocket and everybody's smoking a cigarette, you get an explosion, and the fire burns the guy in the derrick to death. So they had they had a safety thing that they had to insist on all the time, where you had a line going from your derrick out at a 45-degree angle, a cable that was anchored into the ground, and it had this little T-handle with a couple of rollers on it, and you hooked this thing onto the cable and sat on it and rode down. It was the most.
So if the explosion happened, you just zipped down.
Yeah, you zipped out of the way.
It was a super steep zip line.
On my first day, these guys were laughing, saying, "All right, get on it, man. You want to be
laughing, lighting up.
You want to go back to college, or you want to stay here and
and toast
and toast, or you get on the Geronimo line."
But it's all kinds of dangerous. And get on the what line?
The Geronimo line is this line that you ride, this little T-handle with a couple of rollers and holding on for dear life.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
So anyway, I successfully rode it, but
it's probably not an easy landing either.
Terrifying.
But better than being toasted alive. So now I'm just thinking about this. There was a John Wayne movie, I think, about like the Roughnecks.
There was, yeah. I think you're right. I'm not a huge John Wayne fan, but maybe later in life I'll come around to John Wayne appreciation, Yeah,
I started off with John Wayne appreciation. Now I'm like, whatever.
So where should we go with this shaggy tale here?
Oh, I don't know. Did you have any place in mind?
No, I want to do... I'm your man. I want to do what you want me to do.
I'm super happy to meander.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm really happy to hear more about
this
time of yours out west, because you told me one day during tennis that you had some job where you were following the harvest from Texas up to North Dakota. And
that's a separate. That I went to college for a year, and then I'd read about this wheat harvesting crew that traveled from Texas all the way to Oklahoma.
Where'd you read about that?
National Geographic.
Really? There was a little ad in the back of National Geographic?
My parents got National Geographic, and it was a fascinating magazine. I mean,
oh my God,
they talked about the wheat with great pictures, you know, and these traveling wheat harvesting crews, and I was like, wow, I'd love to do
So
that,
there was a feature on this profession,
traveling
this
wheat
job.
harvesting crews in the Midwest.
And you looked at it.
Well, they
used to come in a brown paper.
That's right, a brown
wrapper
paper,
that sort of the magazine
paper,
slid out of.
Because all the naked women in it. They put the brown paper.
Oh, those are the
it.
National Geographics. So you saw this, and you're like, I want to do that.
So I saw that.
So
and
after
a
a
log
year
in the
at
back of my
Hobart.
mind. Then my parents, who were they were amateur farmers, and they got some farm-related publications from different places. Got a farm magazine from Indiana.
You remember the names?
I think it was called the Drovers Journal. Drovers are people that raise cows, and there's a lot of Amish people in Indiana. So one of the things that Amish people do is the kids, before they rejoin the church, they take a gap year or they take some time off.
Right, but they don't call it a gap year, right?
No, they call it something else.
I'm trying to remember.
I've kind of forgotten.
Yeah, all right.
And so parents push the kids to go, make sure that before you join the church, we want you to know that you're committed. So a lot of them would join a wheat harvesting crew. That would be it was the same thing that they were doing at home, harvesting wheat and raising, working with machines and stuff. But this was there. So most of the people that I worked with were Amish kids. And so they advertised in Amish areas. And this paper or this magazine that my parents had happened to be from that area. And it had an ad in the back that said, truck driver wanted traveling wheat harvesting crew, phone number, Dodge City, Kansas.
No experience necessary.
I am into that. And I'm in college struggling through comparative poli-sci. I'm like, fuck this place. I'm leaving.
Comparative poli-sci. Had you ever been to Kansas before?
No, I hadn't really been anywhere.
Had you ever been sort of west of New Jersey before?
No, actually, we were harvesting wheat one time in a field in Kansas. And the field was so big, it was like a square mile. And part of it was in Colorado, and I'd never been to Colorado. So I said, can I turn my combine and go harvest so I can say that I've been to Colorado, because I thought maybe I'd never go,
That's great.
And I did.
And so how did you, the spark was lit with National Geographic.
Well, that was a thing. So my college had a program where you could take a I forget what they called it. Now it's probably called a year off, but it had a name. Like you could maintain your position at school, take a year off, and then come back, and your everything was the same. We're still admitted. You didn't have to reapply. And then so I did that, and then I did another. The guy, my boss in the wheat harvest, asked me to stay, which I was pretty impressed by, because he's a guy that had never met anyone from New York before.
Probably making pretty good money back in the day.
Not so much, but we worked 18-hour days, and it was just cool. We would go into little towns that. So
you're 19 or
raised
so.
Wheat. All they did was raise wheat, and then in the week that we were there, all their money gets made. So they were like, we were gods, showing up to give them an income.
Right.
And, and the girls would come out and bring us food, and it was
cool.
The
girl,
the 17-year-old farm. Well,
the farmer's daughter.
I'm telling you, when I was 17, I was probably 17. Maybe I turned 18.
So did you go to college young, at like 16
I went to
or
college
17?
at 17.
Okay.
So I probably was 18 by the time I left after a year.
As long as the farmer's daughter was 18 as well, we got no problem here.
There wasn't any hanky-panky, but it was cool to meet people that valued what we were doing. And I'd have to say, Norm, it's kind of embarrassing to say, but I don't think I'd ever really been valued before, and now I was doing something for them that they desperately needed.
Right.
It was cool.
That's nice.
I like that.
Huh.
I still like it.
Well, who wouldn't? Back to second wife's comment. I mean, people want to be appreciated.
Yeah, and they want to, and it can't be fake. They want to, you want to do something that means something and has impact, and it touches people in some way. And for the first time in my life, I was actually doing it. Liked it.
And so you didn't stay away for just 1 year. You said your boss wanted you to stay. Did you stay a couple of years?
He asked me to stay another year, and I asked Hobart if they would be okay with that, and they said yes. And so I stayed another year and then came back.
And how was that? Because it seems like, going from sort of a sweet, posh liberal arts school in New York State out there to be doing all that stuff and then coming back. It seems like you'd be just irreparably changed.
Yeah, I kind of was to some extent. But I had gotten into politics, just being out there for some reason, and I wanted to spend a term in Washington, and Hobart had access to this program called the Washington Semester, and you could take a term at American University and do internships at the Capitol and the White House and meet the vice president and the president, and because their program was prestigious enough, it had this sort of cachet among those people, so that a congressman or somebody would say, definitely we will. They were open to meeting with our class, and I wanted to do that. So I came back to school pretty focused on.
And who was president? Carter?
Carter, yeah.
Okay.
So I worked in Carter's White House as an intern.
And did you meet Carter?
Yeah, yep.
Best ex-president ever, by the way.
I think, it was a little hard to be there because he was saying some dumb things, and I'm like, why don't you let me write your speeches? I didn't say that to him. But he was interesting. What he did, what he was trying to do was interesting. But I just think he was in the wrong job. It
was a tough time.
He was trying to do something that you really needed a different kind of person to do.
But after he left office, I mean, he's just been so wonderful. His work with Habitat for Humanity, especially, is super inspiring.
Which I happen to think is a sinister organization. By the way.
No, let's hear about that.
Maybe we should talk about that.
Well, we don't have to.
There might be Habitat for Humanity board members on the listening.
They made, for all I know, they do tons of sinister stuff, but they also are building houses and repairing houses for people who need that.
That's true. Let's leave it at that. You're absolutely right, Norm,
and
because you're usually right.
Well, that's not. I don't know you that well. That's not the premise of this. It's not the premise of the show. But so from Habitat to Humanity, let's talk about your work as a general contractor.
Well, okay, so I was...
how did you get into that?
I was out west, and I worked... I was a roughneck. I came back to being a roughneck after a couple of other spots, and in Rawlins, Wyoming. And
where is Rawlins?
Rawlins.
Rawlins.
Back in the...
Rawlins.
How old are you, Norm?
61.
61. So you probably don't remember when Carter was president. There was the energy crisis.
Oh, yeah.
And he said it was the moral equivalent.
No, I was 17 and 18 when Carter was president.
Well, that meant that we, as Americans, should be drilling for oil in America and providing oil and not being a slave to OPEC, which turned out to be, a great bunch to be slaves to, really, because they provided oil cheap.
Yeah.
But we didn't feel that way at the time. They were kind of jerking us around a little bit. So Carter decided to reactivate the local drilling operation. So there were tons. It was like Wyoming and Texas were boom towns. There was oil. Anything that to do with oil, you could get a job easily, a high-paying job. And when you're a kid traveling around in a VW Bug looking for a job, you want to go to the boom town where jobs are plentiful. Rawlins, Wyoming was one of those towns.
Wait, so you were a roughneck with a lime green Volkswagen Beetle. What color was it? What year? I want to know about the car.
Let's see. I had when I was working as a detonator on a seismograph crew outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, in Park City, Utah. I saw this Renault R17 weird color green on the side of the road, and I bought it for like $200. So I sold my red VW Bug and was driving this Renault.
Renault.
Not Renault.
So that's sort of opens you up to a lot of ridicule from the other roughnecks.
Yeah, they didn't care. They weren't that tuned into being as critical
what
as
the hell's a
people
Renault?
around here were more critical of things like that. Like when I brought that car back, I got comments like, Chris, why are you driving that car?
When you worked with Thurston Howell at the time?
Well, honey, why is he driving that? He can't
Really?
go out with our daughter. Are you crazy?
Because it was a foreign car?
Well, it was a car that you've probably never seen. A Renault R17 is like ridiculously unusual.
I grew up with Renaults. We're about the same age.
So since then, I've been collecting a series of very oddball cars. I still do.
Oh, what is currently in the collection?
Well, I bought a Ferrari Testarossa last year.
Wow.
And it's a 12-cylinder Ferrari. It's unbelievable. Man, you got to drive this thing. It'll change your life.
Well, I would like to.
And I have another Ferrari.
When can we do that?
It's a V8. It's called a 348,
Uh-huh.
mid-engine V8 Ferrari, and that's equally wonderful. But the 12-cylinder is something that you've just never.
I would love to take that somewhere.
It's great. And then I have should I babble on about cars? You guys just did this last week, right?
No, let's hear it.
Let's move on to something else.
No, I
want
want to hear the cars.
All right, so let's see. How do we do this? So I want to tell you that.
So you have two Ferraris.
You asked me about how I got to be a builder from all this crazy stuff that you're doing.
I did.
And let me just finish that. It'll take a minute.
Okay.
Do I have a minute?
We have as much time as you want.
So I was a roughneck. And what happens when you hit oil as a roughneck, if you're on the crew, you hit a pocket of oil and the geologists come out and everybody's happy and everybody's cracking champagne. Well, that means you're out of a job because they shut the rig down. And now you got to go find another job.
And they bring another crew in, too.
Well, a different kind of crew. Yeah,
right.
A crew that lines the well and puts pumps in or whatever they're going to do. Sometimes they just cap the well and just hold it as a reserve. Like they know how much oil is there. They felt it. Now it's just capped, and there's a lot of those wells around that are just reserve wells. They don't even pump the oil. It's for later, which is kind of cool.
Nice.
But so I went into town, into the bars and Rollins where you get hired as roughnecks. So one of the the bosses of the crew would come into the bar, and you'd say, "Hey, I'm a roughneck. I'm looking for work." My crew just, and they'd say, "Who was your driller?" And I go, "So and so," and "Oh yeah, he's all right. You're hired." Well, they didn't have anything currently going on, so I got a job as a laborer on a construction crew. I was carrying 2x4s and stuff, and there was such an attrition rate that within about a month, I was like the guy with the most experience. People were saying, "How do you frame a wall?" I'm like, "I don't have the slightest idea."
Yeah.
But let's just see if we can figure it out. But it was interesting, and then the company went bankrupt within a couple of months. We all lost our jobs. So by then I had this little posse that I was traveling with, and we were playing some guitar music and just goofing around together and kind of, hanging out. So
and you still had all your digits
had all
back
my
then.
digits, yeah.
Okay.
So then somebody said, "Oh, there's jobs building the Wyoming State Penitentiary out in this desert about 20 miles away, the middle of nowhere. Let's go out and see if we can get hired." So we all, caravanned out, and we all got hired.
You loaded a bunch into your Peugeot clown car.
Yeah, Renault.
Oh, Renault, right.
They had, equally clownish cars. It was like somebody had a Saab 96, the two-stroke Saabs. You had to mix oil with the gas. But anyway, there was some oddballs. And we got jobs. So that day, or that night, my brother, who was living in Jackson Hole, Wyoming at the time, said he had come into Saratoga, Wyoming. It was a really cool little town in the mountains. And he said, "You got to come over here tonight. I want to show you something." And he said, "Just hustle over here." So I got there, and he said, "Check this out. My friend," I forget his name, who was a chemist, and I got this stuff. We got this recipe, and we cooked this stuff up, and it was like a cookie sheet with this kind of blue ice on it.
Please tell you're making acid.
Well, I have no idea how to make acid.
Okay.
I said, "Well, what is it?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know. Let's just see what it is." So we took a piece of it and we crushed it up into a powder. And he said, "You snort it." I'm like,
"No."
All right, I'll try that. And I snorted a little line of the stuff. I swear to God, like all of life's questions were answered. And he said, I don't know what this, but we just got this recipe, So
where
I said,
where did they get the recipe from?
I would say the internet, but it was before the internet. So
Owsley.
They had connections with college. My brother was in the Marine Corps, went to Vietnam, so maybe some of that kind of business.
Knew that this was some kind of drug that
it was a drug.
You would make and
but
take. And
they weren't drug user kind of people, but this was something special. So
it's funny for non-drug user people to do that.
I took it into work the next day.
To the other roughnecks, your posse.
My posse.
Right.
And we chopped up a little of this stuff, and I said, you got to try this. Check this out. And within about 10 minutes, we were laughing hysterically and like on the floor, freaking out, just having the most wonderful time out in the desert, with our hard hats.
Amazing. And to think, like, you brought me some like vodka martini. I mean, what the hell, Chris?
So it turns out one of the guys said, I know what that is. That's crystal meth.
Oh, God.
And I said, what's that?
Yeah.
And he goes, it's crystal meth. It's like crank. It's
like, all right, put a year in
this.
Speed. Is it still the late 70s?
Yeah, probably 79.
Okay.
Maybe 1980.
All right.
So I'm like, wow, really? I didn't know anything about it.
No,
it wasn't even illegal.
Nobody had ever heard of that back then.
Anyway, the boss of this crew showed up, and we were carrying on, and he fired all of us because we were just acting like insane people. So we got fired, and I thought, and as this sort of buzz from this wore off, and the guy said it was this drug that I think maybe I'd heard of that had a bad connotation. I thought, here, you guys take it. And he said, and I thought, you know what? I'm going back home. I'm going to go back.
Right.
I'm going to go back to Red Hook, see what's going on.
All hopped up on your crystal meth experience.
You're like, I'm gripping
ready.
My Renault steering wheel, and I finished up some stuff in a week or so, and then went home and got a job with an architect I knew, helping him write a book about solar houses, and I became a builder through him and became a designer builder, and I've been that ever since.
Helping him write the book because you had a lot of experience writing things.
Yeah, he actually was a weird car collector, so he saw my Renault when I came back, and he goes, whoa. His name was Alex Wade, a Woodstock guy. And he was writing books on designing and building your own solar house. He wrote 4 or 5 books back in the day, and you ready for a little upgrade? So he said, well, if you want to be a builder, I'll set you up. You help me with the book a little bit, take some photos, and demonstrate how to use a belt sander and stuff, and I'll set you up with jobs. And so, starting there, I started building houses as a kind of an assistant, and then pretty soon I got jobs.
And were you living here and working in Woodstock?
Yep, and I've been doing that kind of ever since, although lately I do more real estate development. Like I buy projects. Like I'm buying today, I'm trying to buy an abandoned nursing home in Williamstown, Massachusetts. 187 beds.
Wow, and what are you going to do with it?
Well, I'd like to make it into a nursing home, but I would need a physician to go in with me. And I'm trying to talk my friend Art Chandler into being that physician, because he is a physician.
Chandler.
You know Art?
No, but
I thought maybe you did.
It sounds familiar, but it's a great name.
He's great. Art
Chandler.
Great guy.
Yeah.
So he currently is saying no. But.
So now you're thinking about getting into the nursing home business.
Well, think about this.
From real estate development.
I made an offer. Should I get into the finances?
Yeah, whatever you want.
I made an offer of $800,000 for this beautiful building in Williamstown, Mass, overlooking the mountains.
Did you say 187 units or something like that?
187 bed. It was a nursing home. 187 beds. So that means 187.
Gotcha.
Some of the rooms are double, so it might be 150 single rooms.
Yeah.
And what they get currently, around here anyway, is about $500. If you're in a nursing home, you pay about $500 a night per bed.
Wow.
So let's just get the old calculator out.
No.
Let's just do it, shall we?
Well, that's let's say there's 180 beds.
Math, you get 187.
So is that 90,000 a night?
500 per night. And how many nights per year? 365.
Well, just tell us how much a night.
So your yearly gross income...
$34 million.
$34 million.
Well,
now, yes, you've got to have a doctor on staff.
Because I got like $20.
You don't need to invest. That's the income. The investors, so what that means is that you do a public service for Williamstown, Mass, and you make $37 million a year, minus the cost of your staff.
But
let's say you have 200 staff members.
No,
let's say one per person.
Okay.
Let's see how much that would cost.
But but also, I mean, public service. But $500 a night for
That's
a
what my
nursing home
stother
is
pays because she's in a nursing home. So I know that.
Well, that may be how it goes, but
Right.
that's not fair. Like, $500
not fair to who?
for people who need to check into a nursing home. That's
The
a
government,
lot.
the government will pay if you're broke.
Yeah.
If you have some assets and you spend them down in a specific way that the government allows you to do.
It's tough. It's a lot of
Put
money.
your assets over in a trust, and the trust stays active for 5 years or so.
Right.
You can have $1 million, and you can put it in this trust. If you don't touch it for 5 years, it's like you didn't have it. Now, the trust isn't yours anymore. You have to give it to your kids or whatever. But you are allowed to do that rather than spending it down, and just squandering it.
Wow. So you are in the process of negotiating to purchase this building.
Yes, I've made an offer, and there's another offer on the table because I had bought something else, and I lost my chance to jump in as the first guy. I bought an abandoned high school in Bennington, Vermont. And I just felt like these two projects would be too much. But now the town wants to, we fixed up the high school to some extent, and the town of Bennington wants to purchase it. So we're negotiating for them to buy it from me.
So you fixed it up. I mean, in abandoned high school, I'm guessing it's just riddled with asbestos.
Actually, the previous some Canadian guy was driving through with his wife on a little New England vacation and saw auction today in front of this abandoned high school. This was 10 years ago, and they went to the auction and he bid $50,000. Bought the whole building. It's 150,000 square feet with 6 basketball courts.
Egads.
So the first thing he did was call an asbestos guy and get all the asbestos taken out, and a state person to come in and say everything's cool.
Wow.
And he put all new marble columns up everywhere and all this, and then he just sort of lost his way. He wanted to go back to Canada and just be left alone.
Yeah.
So I bought it from him with all these improvements. So that's
what luck.
Yeah.
And now you're going to sell it to the town.
If it works, if it works out that way.
Knocking on wood for you.
But that frees me up a little bit to do this other thing, which I wanted to do a year and a half ago. Now I've jumped back in, and there's another person in front of me.
Another suitor.
It's some organization that wants to have a rehab center there. But I don't think
the town doesn't want that
Mass
as much as they want what you're offering.
There's a high school a half a mile away. Williamstown, Mass is even stuffier than Red Hook, New York.
Person is, but that's a pretty easy
they
thing to
just
whip
say,
up the local residents about.
There's something wrong with this other bid. Let's go to Gilbert and see what he's got.
Yeah, the
anyway.
The NIMBY forces are all over that.
So that's what I'm doing.
So prior to being a real estate investor, you were a general contractor. And what kinds of stuff
I still sort
did
of
you?
am, yeah. Matter of fact, my good friend Peter Sweeney, who's an architect in town, has several projects that he wants me. A lot of what I did was an architect would get a customer from New York. Usually, they would design a house, they buy some property up here, and then they together they would look for a builder. And he would say, "Well, I did work with Gilbert 10 times. You want to hire him, or you want to? Or I have these other people that I work with." So they'll say, "Maybe let's try Gilbert." And so I'll give a price or proposal or.
Do you have a website
suggestion
with your work?
No, I don't have any of that.
Why am I not surprised?
I'm sort of what would you call it? A little bit on the DL,
On the down low.
That's right.
Philistine.
Philistine. What does that mean?
Oh, and it's just I don't know. Just somebody who's not.
I gotta look it up.
Up on the latest technology.
If any of my friends are listening, can you look up Philistine and text me the result?
Stuck in a different era. Yeah, please don't text me because I probably used it wrong. So you still do some of that?
Yeah. I work today. I have a building in Hudson that I rent to Etsy. The online group.
Yeah, sure.
The guy that started Etsy is a friend, and he lives in Catskill, and so he. I don't know, 6, 8, maybe 10 years ago, he said he came to a concert that we had in this building, my building. It was an abandoned foundry from the Civil War. They made cannonballs for the
Wow.
fight against the South.
Cool.
So we called it the Cannonball Factory. We would have concerts. He came to a concert and said, I got this little business. Might want to rent some space. I'm like, oh, what's it called? He said, well, it's Etsy. And I'm like, I never heard of it. I'm not interested. And then he called a couple times. And then I looked him up online. I'm like, oh, wow, this dude is cool. So it turns out to actually be cool. And we started renting parts of the building and fixing up. It's a 5-story building, so I fix up a floor, and Etsy would rent it for their headquarters. And then they fired him as the CEO, although he still retained the ownership position, just sort of like they did to, what's his name, Steve Jobs.
That happens a lot. Yeah.
Happens a lot. And so then I thought, well, that's it for Etsy. But then they stayed with me, and we fixed up the whole building for them. So I work today doing some, changes that they want to make. So.
But you're not swinging a hammer anymore.
I was hooking up sinks. We were changing. They wanted to freshen up the environment for when the people come back, because they've been allowed to work from home.
Right.
There's a time where Etsy is going to say everybody has to work they have to come into work. They can't be home anymore, or at least 3 days a week or whatever. So they want to freshen up the place so that it's inviting more so than it was. It was always inviting, but it's even more inviting.
So you literally down there yourself with the Teflon tape or the plumber's putty or whatever?
I hired this, I hired a cabinet maker. I have a cabinet shop, and my cabinet maker went there, built all the cabinets, 3, 4, 5 stories worth of cabinets, and then called the countertop company, and they measured, and yesterday they said, we have extra time. We're going to put the countertops in. But they took out all our sinks that we had temporarily hooked up, put the countertops in, and then left. So the
gotcha.
The head kind of guy said, we don't have any sinks at work. So I thought, well, crap, I got to go instead of playing tennis this morning, I got to go down there and hook up all the sinks. But then my tennis was canceled anyway.
There you go.
And so I thought, well, I'll just go down, and I did. I've hooked up 5 or 6 sinks, and so that they have their facility, set up with coffee makers. And, if you work in Etsy, they don't pay a tremendous amount, but there's a lot of perks, like lunch, catered lunch every day, fancy
that's
food,
nice.
Really nice coffee, 6 different kinds of creamer if you want, you want oat milk, you got it.
And their offices are in Catskill or Hudson or both?
The guy that started it, Rob, lives in Catskill.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's not the CEO anymore.
Right.
You ready for another touch here?
No, I'm fine. Thank you. Yeah. All right.
Just saying no.
We got first time for everything.
Little. Oh my God, you guys are like lightweights.
So lightweights. Yeah, that's
just kidding. Little joke.
That's me, but especially Matt.
Well, man, he has work. He's working here.
He's in charge.
Not a joke.
So you had a second wife. Did you have any children with the second wife?
No, but the first wife I did. I had 3 wonderful children and 3 grandchildren too.
Grandchildren. What's that like?
That's great.
Yeah,
really funny. When I show up, they think that I'm like, they ride me like a farm animal. Like Grandpa's here. Get on the ground, we're jumping on, all 3 of us, and they ride them around, and the dog comes after, nipping and biting and barking. It's hilarious.
That's great. And where are the kids and the grandkids?
All 3 live in Pleasant Valley, where my eldest son lives, Alex.
Oh, so your eldest son has 3 kids.
3 kids, and then my daughter is a backcountry guide in Canada. She's a sponsored snowboarder by the Burton's snowboard company, and she also does these snow. They have snow. Or do you ski, Norm?
Yeah,
I
did.
I have backcountry skis, but they now have snowboards that are backcountry. They split into 2 pieces. You put climbing skins on each side, and you climb the mountain.
Sounds like skis.
It is, except it's a snowboard. When you get to the top, you latch it back together.
Oh.
And you change the binding slightly, and now you snowboard down this uncharted, powder.
Wow.
So she does that in the mountains in Canada as a guide. It's kind of a regulated industry in Canada.
Nice.
Many industries are.
She's forgiven for not giving you grandchildren yet.
No, she's too tied up in and she's a fine artist also.
Oh, nice. What does she do?
She does, lately she's been doing these things where she calls, she does big murals. Like I went to visit her in Denver. She did a mural for the Burton headquarters there, and she painted a giant mural on the side of their building. It's
Great.
huge. So she does these big industrial murals sometimes.
Cool.
But she has this strange ability to take, when she's traveling, when she's in the mountains or she's away in the woods or something, she'll stop, pull out her sketch pad, and put a pen down and just not take the pen off the paper. She calls it a single line drawing. So she'll just sort of swirl the pen around, and it looks, when she's done, it looks like the thing that she's seeing. And then she'll take that back and render it into a bigger piece or
Cool.
a mural or something. So it's kind of cool.
And your other child?
My youngest son is a Casey. He's
Casey.
He is an athletic model and a trainer. So he was a trainer at a gym in the city called Barry's Gym, and now he got a job. Do you know the company Nordic Track? Remember Nordic Track?
Yeah.
I still have one of the original Nordic Track ski machines.
Right.
Nordic Track now it's bought by a different company called iFit or something. He works for iFit. He's the on-camera person. If you buy one of their machines and you want to dial in your running machine, and you want to say, I want to run in the little German hilltop villages. Punch in German hilltop villages, and there's my son saying, "Hey guys, come on,
let's go.
Let's do it." And
We're going to
went to the
Kitzbühel.
German. He went to the German villages with a cameraman running behind him, and he said, "Okay, there's a hill," and the machine will simulate that hill. Okay, we're going to take it easy. The machine will slow down. It's all tuned into the.
And is it still a Nordic Track-like thing, which was basically a cross-country ski?
That's it's the company. That company still exists. But except for the one Nordic Track that I have, I don't think anybody else has them anymore. I can't make it work that well. I don't bother, but I have it. It's a beautiful machine, wooden skis, but it makes this clattering sound. I don't know if you've ever been on one, but no. Then they got into what are they called? Treadmills.
Yeah.
So now it's essentially a treadmill.
Right,
I think it's
called what?
I think it's called iFit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so this has been amazing life all over the place.
Wrapping up here?
We are kind of wrapping up.
Huh.
What's next? What's on your? I hate this term, but what bucket list? What are the things you really want to do next?
I think you and I should do some theater, like Waiting for Godot, or
I did that.
Oh,
once.
did you?
Yeah, it was the only time in live theater that I got the role I really wanted, which was
Really?
Pazzo.
I don't really know that
Pazzo,
play at
he's
all.
blind in the second act.
Two guys, it could be one of the.
That's great. I would
what's
love.
His, radio theater. It could be
Yeah.
radio theater. So I'm writing some stuff that's sort of like.
I would love to read your stuff.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be, catch your fancy.
So you've been writing for like your entire life.
Off and
Sounds
on,
like.
yeah. I did there was a period when I wanted to be a TV star, so I got and I was doing a lot of cooking, so I thought that I would create this cooking show called Carpentry Cuisine. It would be like the premise was that you're a divorced father, which I was at that time.
Sawdust in every dish.
The woman has taken all your cooking shit, all your pans, your fancy Calphalon pans. But what you have is a whole truck full of fancy tools. So cooking with all your fancy tools. So you'd cook with a roofing torch and cut your chicken with a sawzall with a stainless steel blade on it. And
Did you ever see that cookbook where you put dishes in the front of your car by the engine?
So yeah, I heard. Yeah, it's like and British cars are better for that because they overheat all the time.
That's great.
But I actually almost got this to the Food Network. I had a producer,
Love that.
weatherman. What's his name?
I don't know.
The black
Al
Al Roker was.
yeah.
He produces more than he actually acts, and he makes more money as a producer.
Yeah,
so
I'll
he was
bet.
my producer, and we did one episode to the Food Network, and they said, it's a little obscure. I don't think the average person is going to have these tools.
Oh,
We
please.
passed. Now, this was 15 years ago. Now,
Obscure is
now it probably would have flown like a bird.
yeah. Well, I can't wait to see what's next for you. And I'm so appreciative of you being here tonight and talking with me and sharing
Super
your
fun.
wonderful stories. What a treat. And it has flown by. And this has been, correct me if I'm wrong, on radiofreeradcliffe.org. Thanks to Matt Rosenberg, Patricia Wind,
Thanks,
and
Matt.
everybody here at the Epicurean for having us.
What a wonderful service you guys are doing. I think it's wonderful.
It's loads of fun. All right, everybody have a safe night. Stay inside and don't slip around too much.